everyone, it's Kerry back with you today. I've recently been making lots and lots of these little paper pouches. They're a bit like an envelope in style. And I was originally inspired to make these by Tracie Fox, and this is actually one of Tracie's papers. It's called Patchwork, and I shall leave a link in the description box below to this paper in her shop. And I've also been using this lovely bright green and blue sort of paper. Now the image on screen is not as vibrant as these papers are in real life. These papers I purchased from Kory. She's the ArtArchaeologist, and I'll also leave a link below to these papers of Kory's as well. So the actual construction of these pouches is quite basic. It's a bit like an envelope. I've just lined mine with some recycled brown paper from packaging, but you could use whatever you like. So what I've got here is one of Tracie's patchwork paper sheets, and then the first step that I do is select some brown paper and make sure that it's going to suit my need. So this paper I quite like because it's got a perforated tear line, and I basically just put one sheet per piece of this brown paper. And to begin with, I just glue it down with a little bit of glue stick. So once I've glued it down onto the paper, it's just tacked on there a little bit, which makes it easier when I want to go and sew around the edge. Now, if you don't have a sewing machine, you can glue it all the way around. I'd use glue stick, but I would also use some art glitter glue or something around the edges to give it a bit more strength on the edges. And if you wanted to get a stitched appearance without a sewing machine, you could use a stitched stamp around the edges here to give you that appearance, or you could go along with a black marker and just like zigzag or just do your dotted lines to give the appearance of stitching. So once I've glued my sheet down onto the brown paper, I then tear the edges off till I get it to the size that I want. Now you can use a tear ruler if you have one, or just a plain ruler, or cut it out if you don't want to have the torn edges. And I leave roughly 1 centimetre. And then I just tear my sheet up. So once I've torn that out, pop it around that way so you can see, I then take it to my sewing machine and I stitch all the way around the edge with a zigzag stitch, and I'm stitching on and off the actual paper. So one side of the stitch will be on the patchwork paper and the other side of the stitch will be on my brown paper. And once I've done that, it looks like this. Now my sewing is very far from perfect, but I don't mind. It sort of adds to the handmade nature of it. Now I keep these strips aside and I'll use those as part of my embellishments. And the reason I do that is because, I mean, this is just basic brown paper, so pretty much any brown paper would work. But if I'm using paper that I've torn from the edges here, I already know this colour is going to match and suit this project because it's from this project originally. So I keep all of those aside, and then once I've got my sewn border on this piece of paper, I just roughly determine where I want my pouch to be. So probably about there, and then I fold creases into my pouch. So that's my basic design of my pouch. Then I'll take this back to my sewing machine and I'm just going to do a straight stitch just down the inside of this zigzag stitch here. So I'll just go and do that and I'll be right back. So now I've sewn down the sides, the construction of the pouch is pretty much complete and it's time to embellish. I'm just going to pop a paper clip on here to help keep it closed for the moment. Now when I'm picking the embellishments or things that I want to embellish these pouches with, I look at the design and pick out some colours and then try and match it to fabrics or scraps or things that I have in my stash. So that's what I was saying before about this paper. I already know it matches because it's from this project. So I'll go to my stash and I'll grab out a handful of bits and pieces, and then I'll start seeing what I like the look of on my project. So I think this colour picks out quite well some of the colour in this design. So I'll just have a little bit because this is quite a bright colour. Then I think this one's going to match pretty good. And this, I love this fabric. It's my new favourite. It's a cotton frizz ribbon, and it's like a fabric with these really long frayed edges. I just love it. And then there's quite a dark sort of rusty colour in there as well, so I might use this to pick out that colour. Okay. So I don't want to stitch this directly onto my pouch because I find that a little bit difficult. I'd rather just make the embellishment separately and then glue it on. So I'm going to pop that to the side, and I'm going to use a piece of this brown paper as my base to stitch my bits on. So I probably want about half the width of this pouch in the brown paper. So I'm just going to tear that bit off there. And I don't really want a straight line on the other end, so I'll just tear that as well. Anywhere that there's a particularly straight line, I'll just add a bit of interest by tearing it. Not that you'll see a lot of it. Alright, so that will do. And then I want to just stamp on here a little bit. Again, just to add interest and take away the sort of plainness of it. And it doesn't really matter what you use because, again, you're not really going to see it afterwards. So I might just this is just like a little motif sort of design, and then some text. I think can never go wrong with text. Alright, so that'll do. So I'll bring my pouch back in and determine which colours I want to use. So I've got these three colours here. Which one of these colours I want to be more dominant on the top. I think I'll put this one on the bottom because there's not a lot of this colour on the envelope and I just want it to sort of tie in. And then these two, there's probably more of this green in here, but this green's quite bright, so I might layer it up like that. Then I'll just take the whole brown paper with these little bits on to my sewing machine. I'm just going to run one length of stitching down. So now I have my stitched embellishment here, and when I lay that on top of my pouch, I quite like the colours all matching in, but I feel like this sort of blends into the background a little bit too much. So I like putting a little bit of black lace underneath. I think it helps pop it up off the background. Now, if you don't have a very wide piece of black lace, you're going to lose it underneath your embellishment. So for example, if I put this here and then pop my embellishment straight over the top, you barely see any of the lace anymore because I've stuck the embellishment over the top. So if you want to get around that, you can cut your lace in half, and then if you don't particularly like the straight line, so if I put that here and that one there and pop that on, I don't particularly like that harsh straight edge, so I could also cut my lace a little bit sort of messy, almost like a bit of a wave going on in it. And then when I put down my piece of cut lace, I don't have that really harsh straight edge along the top there, and you could pull bits off and make it look a little bit more scruffy if you want to. Just gives it a bit more character. So now I've used that same one little bit of lace, and I can pop my embellishment on the top there. I can see a lot more of my lace, and it's given that embellishment a bit of a background. So now I'll just go ahead and glue that down. I'm just going to use art glitter glue. Just going to put a little bit there for the lace. I'm just going to set that slightly off center so that I don't have this lace isn't sort of in a block. I'm going to move that one over a bit like that. Now it doesn't matter if these aren't particularly well glued down, because once you glue your embellishment over the top, that'll help hold everything down as well. Okay, and then I'll go ahead and glue this one down as well. Alright, and so now I just need a focal point for my embellishment here, and at the moment I'm all about butterflies. So I could go with something like that. Maybe this one. So yep, I think I'll go with that one, and I'm just going to ink around the edges of my butterfly. So I'm just curving the edges of the butterfly's wings a little bit. I'm using the edges of my scissors. Use a bone folder or something like that. And then I'll just glue that down as well. So once I've glued my butterfly down, I could leave it at that, but I like to add a little bit of bling. So again, I've picked a colour that matches one of the colours in my background. And I'm just going to add that onto the brown paper. And I'm just going to have it peeking out slightly from behind a little bit of the fabric. I think it just sort of adds it like a little bit of a hidden detail when it's not, you know, right smack bang in the middle. It's sort of just hidden a little bit under the side there. And I might also add a word, I think. Imagine. Might pop that there. So once your glue's dry, then your pouch is ready to be filled up. And embellishing is just whatever you want to do. I mean, on this one I've used a little charm with a pin and a little jingle bell. And I've used some sari silk, and this blue here is actually a baby wipe that I've used to mop up some ink. So you can use all your little scraps and bits and pieces up when you're making these. Super quick little project and so much fun. So I hope that was helpful for you today. I'll leave links to both Tracie and Kory's papers in the description box below. Thanks so much for joining me today. I'll see you again next time. Bye.